Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to start with a few messages from some great organizations who are sponsoring tonight's event. And we're going to go ahead and start with the Combating Antisemitism Movement.
Hello and good evening. My name is Catherine Schkupp, the Partnerships and Diplomatic Relations Manager at the Combat Antisemitism Movement. Founded just 4 years ago, CAM began a movement, a nonpartisan, grassroots, global human rights organization with the goal of ending anti-Semitism. As a new leading voice in the collective effort against anti-Semitism, CAM builds and fosters alliances with over 700 engaged organizations and over 2 million people worldwide. These alliances transcend political, religious, and cultural divides. We reach diverse audiences and forge relationships with policymakers at the global, national, and local levels. I want to congratulate our partner, ICANN, the Israeli-American Civic Action Union, for putting this extremely important summit together today. Combating anti-Semitism in schools is a deeply personal subject for me. As a Catholic school student, anti-Semitic comments were thankfully minimal, but definitely appeared a few times in the form of Holocaust-related jokes and personal targeting on the topic of Israel. Of course, I had to be the student who was forced to justify my Zionism and speak on behalf of the State of Israel. As parents, educators, and community members watching today's program, you know that one of the answers to fighting anti-Semitism and hate is education. However, sometimes education can be used as misinformation and delegitimization. The front lines of the war against Zionism, which we know is anti-Semitic, have long been held on college campuses. In the last few years, however, your home state of California has become the battleground for the minds of our vulnerable youth in public schools. Those fringe groups that continue to push, now across the United States, for overtly anti-Israel, anti-Semitic ethnic studies curricula have thankfully been met with backlash. Many thanks to the efforts of those of you with us today that understand how dangerous this issue is for young students. You should and can continue to find out what your students are being taught by communicating with the school principals and superintendents, by attending public school board meetings, and by partaking in the event today, which will feature opportunities to learn from experts on what more can be done in your communities. Each of you can make a difference as it relates to this critical issue. We must ensure that anti-Semitism in the form of anti-Zionism does not enter the classroom, nor does it have the ability to proliferate among students. I also invite you to learn more about the types of initiatives and programs we run at the Combat Antisemitism Movement, especially our student creative contests, which teach students about their Jewish heritage and ways to combat anti-Semitism. We are active on social media and have an online portal known as Report It, which helps people report online anti-Semitism across social media platforms. You can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter from our Anti-Semitism Research Center, which uses unique methodology to comprehensively track the latest anti-Semitic trends globally. These reports have become go-to resources for many decision makers. You can find more information on all this at our website, www.combatantisemitism.org. Thank you for joining this important program today, and we appreciate our partnership with ICANN and the important work that you do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much to our partners from CAM, the Combating Antisemitism Movement. Next, we will have Leora from Stand With Us. All right, Leora, this show is yours.
Can you hear me? I think you can hear me, yes. Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Leora Bergstein, and I am the High School Regional Manager for Southern California at Stand With Us, which is an international nonprofit organization that's dedicated to educating the public about Israel and combating anti-Semitism. And in the high school space, in my role, I do support students in grades 9 through 12 in any kind of high school to bring education into their schools and community through our high school internship and teen leadership council. Students in the high school space, they do receive one-on-one mentorship, training, seminars, and conferences to be able to bring this education on anti-Semitism to their schools and communities and combat it, because we believe that education is the road to peace. We'll often work with administrators to implement initiatives such as getting Jewish American Heritage Month recognized, or implementing education for International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And truly, some of my students have endured the worst anti-Semitism, from being told that their birth defect is being Jewish, or having to endure having their classmates do the Nazi salute to them as they pass them in the halls every single day. And it really is our hope to combat this hatred through education. So stay connected with us. Check out standwithus.com, as well as the high school tab on the website to stay connected and gain resources at any time. We are here for you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leora. And then quickly, we will hand it over to Jen from, here we go, Jen from Club Z.
Club Z.
Take it
Hi,
away.
everyone. Hi, Dylan. Nice to see you. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Weintraub from Club Z. I'm the regional director. And as we know tonight, anti-Semitism is not only in the college space anymore, but has seeped into the high schools. It's important for us as community members, as families, that our teens are equipped to deal with this challenge. And Club Z works, we actually start in 8th grade. We start very young because we want them to be ready to go by the time they hit 9th grade so that they can identify anti-Semitism in the classroom. Hi, Daniela Bloom. How are you? Glad that you're here. We want our teens to be outspoken advocates. We really believe that our Jewish teenagers are leading the way, and they are our best representative in the classroom online. And while our parents and community members are our best allies and advocates in the boardroom space. And I want to give you, I'll be very quick, one story about a teenager who at school was told anti-Semitic slurs. And it's yes, anti-Semitism happens, but at Club Z, we want our teens to hold people accountable. So this teen went to the administration, reported it, got the student suspended. And he did that because of Club Z, because he had the knowledge and that he had the confidence. I call it Jewish self-confidence in himself to be able to do that. And Dylan, if I could just say one more story of a teen in Los Angeles at Pali High School, was told that he couldn't be a part of the minority group at school because he was Jewish, and Jews aren't a minority. My teen not only went to the administration, held the principal accountable and the teacher, got an apology from the teacher, and he was let in to be a part of this group. It's not only about dealing with anti-Semitism and combating it, but standing up and being a strong and proud Jew, and that's what we do at Club Z. Thank you, Dylan.
All right, thank you, Jen. Next up, we're actually going to go ahead and get started now formally. The formal program will now begin. We're just going to do a quick welcome from the chair of ICANN California, Michael Mikolov. So Michael, why don't you go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Dylan. And I want to first welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for jumping onto this. It is what we at ICANN think to be one of probably the most critical initiatives that we've been undertaking as of late with respect to protecting our students and our teachers and our schools as a whole. As the chair of the Israeli-American Action Civic Network in California, I'm honored to welcome you guys to the first ever Combating Antisemitism Summit for LA schools. For those of you that don't know, ICANN is a grassroots organization that empowers Israeli-American families by creating a comprehensive understanding of America's civic history, our political systems, our legislative processes, and just government as a whole, so that we can contribute to a more inclusive and equitable society. And that's why tonight we're proud to bring our community together for a specific and what I personally believe to be a very urgent cause, being the fight against anti-Semitism. It's a deeply rooted prejudice that has seen a disturbing resurgence in recent years. The ADL recently put out that California consistently ranks the highest among the US states in reported incidents against Jewish people. And LA specifically saw a 29% increase in hate crimes targeting Jews and Israeli immigrants in 2021 alone. So this is not just a problem we have, but it's a problem that's kind of growing, hence our attention to this initiative. Now, the LAUSD, which is the second largest school district in the US, it's a microcosm of a wider society with an average enrollment of just over 6 million students. LAUSD shapes a significant percentage of future business owners, employees, community leaders, and elected officials. And to be quite frank, it's our shared responsibility to ensure that these spaces are safe, inclusive, and free from hate. So tonight, we're convening to address this pressing issue head on. We are joined by an impressive roster of educational leaders, community advocates, and individuals that have been directly impacted by anti-Semitism. So you guys are going to hear from fellow parents whose children are in these schools and their experiences. Together, we are, and we continue to confront the threat of anti-Semitism, discuss the strategies for protection, and affirm our commitment to creating a world where every student, teacher, and family member feels valued and secure. So with that, I want to thank you guys for joining us in this really important cause. Your participation is indicative of your commitment to change and progress. I personally thank you guys. I have 2 little boys myself that are in the school system. And so for me, this is very important. As a member of our community, it's really important. And so I thank all of you guys. I briefly want to recognize that impressive power roster that we talked about earlier, joining us and expressing their participation and willingness to work with us on this effort. We have LAUSD Superintendent Carvalho in the meeting, who you'll be hearing from. We have the president of UTLA, Mayart Cruz, who you'll be hearing from. And we have 3 board members of LAUSD, Nick Melvoin, Kelly Gonez, and Scott, forgive me if I butcher your last name, but Scott Schmierelson. I hope I got that correct. And so thank you to all the members of LAUSD in your various capacities for participating in this with us. On behalf of all the parents on the line, we truly appreciate it. And lastly, to our sponsors, our teachers, and all of you guys, all the parents on the call, this is an important one, and we do have to confront this thing, and it's what we've been doing and what we'll continue to do. And so thank you guys for joining. It's going to be the first, and there will be a lot more to come. So get ready. Dylan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. And next up, we'll have Superintendent Carvalho give greetings. Thank you for being able to join us on short notice.
Thank you very much, Dylan. And let me just, in a very direct way, express our full support for any initiative, any organization, collection of organizations that seeks to bring about an educational environment that respects all cultures and acknowledges the current condition, which is not acceptable. Obviously, as it was just stated, an incredible increase in anti-Semitic actions across the globe in our nation, but leading the way, unfortunately, is California. There is no place for hate in our communities. There's certainly no place for hate in our schools. Schools represent, sadly, a manifestation of this scourge, but schools also represent the perfect solution for anti-Semitic behaviors that we see so pervasively in our communities. Education is the solution, and education must continue to be the solution to deal with anti-Semitic actions that unfortunately target students and adults in our community. So the insights that will be provided today and in meetings to come will have an incredible impact in terms of reducing anti-Jewish crimes in our communities and bringing to the surface the realities that many of our students face in Los Angeles. We want to understand the root causes and the manifestations of anti-Semitism so we can bring about educational solutions for these problems. And lastly, we want to have meaningful conversations with all stakeholders to provide an avenue, a safe avenue of expression and peace in our community. Lastly, it is good to understand what's happening in our community. And I stand firm in my belief that the schoolhouse will be the solution for the pervasive anti-Semitism that we see in our communities. Education has been and will continue to be the solution for intolerance, for lack of understanding, for hatred. Our schools at Los Angeles Unified will be safe havens where there will be no place for hate. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I look forward to supporting in an aggressive way, along with our team, the actions and the work of ICANN.
right, Superintendent, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us on such short notice. We'll let you get to the rest of your evening, and thank you again for your leadership on this issue. All right, so next up we have Cecily Meyer-Cruz, the president of UTLA. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much, Dylan. Good evening, parents, community members, students, educators. My name is Cecily Meyer-Cruz, and I am the president of United Teachers Los Angeles. I'm coming to you live from Oakland, California, where our officers came up here today to help with a strike, and successfully they have reached an agreement. I'm honored to be here representing our over 35,000 members of UTLA, standing up to combat hate, injustice, and anti-Semitism in our schools and in our workplaces and our classrooms. This type of hatred has no business in our schools and in our workplaces and in the world. And so it is going to be up to us working together to make sure that we end these type of practices. It is imperative for us to stand together, fight together as a collective to end these practices and anti-Semitism. Together, we can do so much, and we will. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cecily, and thank you so much for your leadership and friendship to our community. I appreciate your hard work with us. Thank you. All right, so next up, we're going to have a representative from the Educators Caucus for Israel from UTLA, and also we have, I think we're missing Jen, but we have Lisa Reagan-DeRoss with us as well. So Jen, I'll let you go ahead and take it away from here, and then we'll bring in Lisa. Sorry, Jen, you're Jennifer, you're muted. Sorry, let me go ahead and yeah, we can't hear you. Nope. Maybe try here. Let's try this. Try now. No, can't hear you now. Do you want to try reconnecting, and we'll go with Lisa for now? Maybe you can try your phone. Yeah. Okay. Lisa, go ahead. We'll start with you.
Thanks. Good evening, Superintendent Carvalho and everyone, and welcome to the first ever LAUSD Summit on Combating Antisemitism. My name is Dr. Lisa DeRoss, an assistant principal at Fairfax High School in the historically Jewish neighborhood in the Mid-City, West Hollywood area, and I'm also vice president of the Association of Jewish Educators of LAUSD. Today, we gather with a shared mission to address the pressing issue of anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish actions in our schools and communities, and to work towards a safer and more inclusive learning and working environment for all of us. Before we begin, allow me to share a bit about the Association of Jewish Educators. We are an organization dedicated to promoting public education in the Jewish communities, proudly representing all Jewish employees within LAUSD. Our focus is on safeguarding Jewish issues in district policies, ensuring sensitivity to religious observances, the separation of church and state, and the adoption of appropriate instructional materials. But today we come together at a critical time. Recent data has revealed alarming trends. In California alone, incidents of anti-Semitic harassment doubled from 2019 to 2022. Shockingly, the last 2 years have seen spikes in anti-Semitic incidents and crimes in May and November during the school year when it should be addressed. Most alarmingly, reported anti-Jewish hate incidents in K-12 public schools surged by 300% since 2020. And yet, even more concerning is that we know these statistics represent only a fraction of the true extent of the problem, as anti-Semitic incidents remain severely underreported nationwide. That is why AJE led the way with board members Schmerelson, Melvoin, and Gomez last year in passing the unanimous resolution condemning anti-Semitism in LAUSD. Allow me to share a personal anecdote that highlights the urgency of our cause. As a child and then later as a teacher, I would often report swastikas I saw drawn on walls to the principal. However, it often seemed that little more than painting over those hateful symbols occurred, as they would reappear time and again with no mention of them school-wide. To my disappointment, when I became an assistant principal, I discovered that reporting such incidents to the district was not considered necessary by some principals, and that others don't know the best way to report graffiti and other acts of Jewish hate. These experiences solidified my belief in the need for robust reporting mechanisms and comprehensive training for all educators, school staff, and administrators. Today, our presenters comprise a diverse group of individuals who are crucial to combating anti-Semitism. School district board members, union leaders, educators, religious leaders, legal scholars, and heads of Jewish and Zionist organizations from across the country. And your presence here as parents, educators, students, and community members demonstrates your commitment to fostering understanding, promoting mutual respect, and safeguarding the well-being of our students. Throughout tonight's summit, I encourage you to actively participate by leaving questions and comments in the chat. While we may not be able to address every question immediately, we value your input and we aim to address your concerns in future events. Together, let's create an environment where anti-Semitism has no place, where our students can thrive without fear, and where respect and inclusivity are the cornerstones of our educational institutions. On behalf of the LAUSD Association of Jewish Educators, thank you once again for joining us. Let's make a difference together.
All right, thank you so much, Lisa. And I think we have Jennifer here. Can we hear you now?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, loud and clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and viewers joining us from around the world, good evening and welcome to the inaugural LAUSD Summit on Combating Antisemitism. Tonight, we gather here with a shared purpose to shine a light on the pervasive issues of anti-Semitism and to open up a much-needed conversation within our community of parents, educators, families, and community professionals. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Jennifer Grenfeld, a teacher with 25 years of experience, 23 of which have been dedicated to serving LAUSD. As a Jewish mother of 2 young children, when already enrolled in LAUSD, this issue hits close to home for me. I have witnessed firsthand the impact of anti-Semitism in our schools. It was during my years as an LAUSD educator that other members of my teacher union made an anti-Semitic motion calling for a boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel, the home to almost half of the world's Jews. This motion deeply troubled me, and I knew I had to take action. Through my involvement with the Educators Caucus for Israel, whose members are part of the teacher union, I became more active within that union. I stood against the motion and was present when it was resoundingly voted down in the union's House of Representatives by 74%. This experience showed me the power of collective action and the importance of speaking out against hatred and discrimination. As the granddaughter of Serene, also known as Auschwitz death camp survivor 5940, and as the mother striving to protect my own children as they grow and thrive in the city and within our schools, the need for this summit on combating anti-Semitism became undeniable. I worry that I see history repeating itself through public displays of anti-Semitism in my own lifetime. But today, I stand here with hope and gratitude, surrounded by brave and knowledgeable panelists and an engaged audience. Together we embark on this journey to create change, to challenge the status quo, and to ensure that our schools are safe, inclusive, and free from hatred. This summit is a pivotal moment, a platform for understanding and action. I urge each and every one of you to join us in this fight against anti-Semitism. Let us come together, listen to the experiences of Jewish families, learn from our district's experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and gain insights from our legal specialists. We'll learn about the demographics of the Los Angeles Jewish community, understand what anti-Semitism is, and hear from other Jewish community leaders. As this summit on combating anti-Semitism progresses, I urge you to actively engage in the summit and its goals. In the comments section, feel free to ask questions, share your own experiences, and actively participate in feedback. The summit is a collective effort, and your involvement is crucial to creating meaningful change. One more thing. This summit is the first of its kind, a sort of rough draft. We hope to repeat this conversation in a couple of months, shortly after school starts, incorporating what we learn along the way in a few weeks after that to have a student-friendly summit to help our young people inform themselves on these issues. This summit is not just about conversation. It is a call to action. It is our plea to create an educational environment that values and protects every single student, regardless of their background. Thank you for being a part of this inaugural summit. Together, we can and will make a difference. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much. And next up, we have board members Melvoin, Schmierelson, and Gonez. We'll go with board member Melvoin first. Go ahead.
Great. Well, thank you, Dylan. And thanks to Superintendent Carvalho and Ms. Meyer-Cruz and Jennifer and Dr. DeRoss. Go Fairfax. And thank you all for being here this evening. And thank you to all the organizations who helped us convene this panel and create space for this important conversation. Important, but also, as everyone here tonight is well aware, an issue that is hardly something new. In fact, anti-Semitism may be one of the world's oldest diseases and is more difficult and complex to eradicate than any virus that has come and gone over the centuries. And as a Jewish elected official and educator, I've seen firsthand how the best inoculation against anti-Semitism is education. Just as the rise of hateful rhetoric in our society has unfortunately pervaded the walls of our schools, I hope that teaching about acceptance and kindness can have an inverse effect, disseminating these lessons far beyond the classroom as we prepare the next generation to tackle anti-Semitism. Most hatred stems from fear, and most fear comes from a lack of understanding. When I was a new teacher in LAUSD in Watts, my students had never met a Jew. And so it was so important for us to build bonds between communities as we work to fight all forms of hate and persecution. LA Unified is committed to providing a safe, healthy, welcoming, and affirming environment for students and staff. In my tenure on the board, I've worked with the Jewish Federation and other partners to end a biased pro-BDS salary point class for our educators and put a better vetting system in place for future class approvals to make sure that none of that anti-Semitic curriculum and rhetoric makes its way into what our teachers are being taught. We also work together, as Jennifer mentioned, last year we worked together to fight and stop successfully a pro-BDS resolution that came from United Teachers Los Angeles. And I appreciate all of you educators and UTLA members who are on here tonight who helped us in that effort. And I think it really awoke a sleeping giant among the Jewish Educators Associations and all of us who realize we can't sleep on our laurels. We've worked together to ensure an ethnic studies curriculum that is holistic and representative and is inclusive, as is the point of ethnic studies, and places the Jewish experience alongside others as a persecuted minority. It doesn't further other us. And I appreciate our teamwork on that, and we have more work to do. We've also made important updates to our reporting systems to make sure that anti-Semitic and hateful graffiti and other incidents are accurately documented and taken seriously. Dr. DeRoss just spoke about this, but it's taken us too long to realize that that's just not vandalism. That's just not graffiti. That is hateful anti-Semitic rhetoric, and it needs to be addressed swiftly and with learning and future opportunities for discussion. Last year, the board unanimously adopted a resolution entitled Affirming the Values of Jewish Students, Staff, and Families in LA Unified. That was brought by my colleague, Mr. Schmerelson, and co-sponsored by myself and Ms. Gonez, and unanimously passed by the board. The resolution denounced anti-Semitism in any form, rhetoric, bullying, violence, graffiti, and other hate crimes, and updated policies, training, and resources to make sure educators can properly respond to instances of anti-Semitism. My team has also met recently and toured with the Holocaust Museum of LA, and I was proud to join them at their Yom HaShoah celebration, or commemoration, more accurately, a few weeks ago, to hear more about how they are partnering with the district to offer field trips and learning experience for students. By continuing to spread awareness and understanding about the Jewish faith and community, I know we can create a future where the threat of anti-Semitism is a distant memory. So thank you for being here tonight. You have my commitment to not only co-host this summit, but do more and continue to work with you all as we spread tolerance and love and compassion and fight vigorously against any anti-Israel and anti-Semitic rhetoric. So thank you, Dylan, for having me, and thanks to my colleagues as well.
Thank you so much, Board Member Melvoin. Thank you for your leadership and your dedication to this issue. Next, I think we have Scott
Trial
Schmelz.
version.
Are you? We don't hear you on audio.
Trial version.
Can you try now?
Trial version.
We're hearing an audio, strange audio thing come through.
Trial version.
Yeah. Maybe we'll try Board Member Gonez next, and we'll figure it out. We'll come back.
Trial version.
Okay. Let's try Board Member Gonez. There you are.
Can you all hear me?
We can hear.
Fantastic. Well, good evening, and thank you so much to ICANN and all of the wonderful partners who are here tonight for putting on this important event. Tonight, as you've heard from everyone, is a really important chance for our Los Angeles community to work together to create a safer, more accepting place for Jewish families and public education, and to show all of our students that anti-Semitism has no place in our schools. As everyone has shared, over the last few years, we've unfortunately seen a devastating escalation in anti-Semitic violence and sentiment across the nation, including, unfortunately, here in Los Angeles. And we know that, sadly, those trends can filter into our schools. But our educators and our district can be voices that combat hate and instead teach love to our next generation. We can foster not just acceptance, but celebration of the diversity that really makes our schools and our city so great. Our board, as you've heard, has unanimously declared its values on this topic, but it's really about making sure that the emphasis on inclusion is felt throughout the entire district, at every level, in every school, in every classroom. And that's why conversations like this one are so important, because they're really opportunities to acknowledge those challenges and to learn about how we all can and must be part of the solution. So thank you all so much for being here and for your leadership in meeting the challenges head on. And thank you for allowing me to join this important conversation.
Thank you so much, Board Member Gonez, and thank you also for your leadership and care and concern about this issue. Let's try your colleague, Board Member Schmerelson.
How about now? You hear me?
Beautiful, perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening to everyone. I'm Scott Schmerelson. I am the Vice President of the Los Angeles Unified School District Board of Education, and I represent Board District 3. First, let me say thanks especially to the Anti-Defamation League for hosting this event and inviting me to speak. I also want to thank my fellow board members, Mr. Melvoin and Ms. Gonez, to address this issue. I believe that this summit is critical because we can share and we can discuss the current crisis that we are facing in America. I will not sugarcoat the situation. We have to acknowledge the sharp rise in hate speech and anti-Semitism in this country and around the world. It was on October 27th, 2018, that a gunman went into the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, killing 11 worshipers and injuring seven others. So how many other recent acts of hate can we trace? Well, sadly, it's not including the unheard acts of intolerance that don't make the evening news, and that's one of the problems. In school districts around the country, there has been a rise in hateful rhetoric that has led to the banning of books telling some stories of Jewish survival. And the best way to combat anti-Semitism is through education. I think we all know that as educators. Unfortunately, education in these subjects is under attack too. There are students who have never heard of the Holocaust. Just as no one is born racist, no one is born bigoted, and nobody is born anti-Semitic, but this summit gives me hope. It's the start of an action on how we can advance through educational circles and teach students about the horrors of hate. What happened in Pittsburgh just didn't happen. It began with a message, the wrong message, and education is how we fight back. The LAUSD's commitment to protecting students' right to learn and work in safe spaces from bias-free areas, free from discrimination, harassment, and violence in any form. LA is the home to the third largest Jewish population in the world. And it's for that reason and more, in 2021, I authored a resolution called Affirming the Value of Jewish Students, Staff, and Families in the LA Unified School District and Addressing Anti-Semitism. I also want to thank also my friends at the Association of Jewish Educators, the AJE, for helping with the resolution language. This resolution goes beyond just an acknowledgement. It's an action plan on how we as a community can proceed forward. It implements protocols such as the implementation of the history, social science framework developed by the state of California. It also affirms the rights of all Jewish students, all Jewish staff, and all Jewish family members. It calls upon the Division of Instruction and the Office of Human Relations, Diversity, and Equity to establish a curriculum and a professional development that recruits and compensates teachers and administrators with expertise in Jewish history and culture. It also allows the district to work with the Association of Jewish Educators, the Anti-Defamation League, and other organizations to help us keep developing our bulletins and our curriculum. I just want to finalize my comments by again saying thank you. Thank you to the Anti-Defamation League, the Association of Jewish Educators, my fellow board members for voting on this resolution, and all other external partners. I really feel confident that we will win this fight against anti-Semitism. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Board Member Schmierelson, and thank you to all of our board members for joining us this evening. If you're able to stick around, we'll do a Q&A towards the end of the session, and if not, we'll see you next time, but we're hoping you're able to stick around. So next up, I'd like to bring Rabbi Abraham Cooper from the Simon Wiesenthal to discuss what is anti-Semitism and the various forms that it takes. Thank you, Rabbi, for being here, and I'll let you.
Thank you, Dylan and ICANN for this remarkable evening. And I was not surprised to see the superintendent here. He's been a blast of fresh air since he arrived in Los Angeles. I think the first week he was here, he came to our Museum of Tolerance with 500 students from across the city. And to have him on here at the inaugural meeting of what we hope will become an alliance for the Jewish community in our city, along with the support of so many other people, UTLA, et cetera, is extremely appreciated, and we shouldn't take it for granted. As someone who looks at this issue across the country and globally, more often than not, you're at loggerheads with the people who hold the power, and to have this kind of relationship is something I think give a lot of credit to ICANN, Dylan, your team. God bless you for it. I'll try to do something that most clergy are not. I'm going to try to be brief and to the point. The question about anti-Semitism in a city that has just recently seen 2 Jewish people shot in outside of 2 synagogues in 2 consecutive days, and we know of the other horrific incidents that have taken place. We don't really need statistics to know that we're in a crisis mode. But I think one statistic that comes from the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, is extremely important. He recently testified that 63% of the hate crimes that are based on religious identity target 2.4% of the U.S. population, American Jews. It's an unacceptable situation, and it's really important that we are discussing how we can do some interventions in the educational domain before people go out into the broader society. There is the most important working definition of anti-Semitism, something that everyone should look up on their own. The letters are IHRA. It's the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. You just put it into your search engine. It'll come up and give you a very comprehensive look. There are now 30 U.S. states that have adopted the IRA definition and over 1,100 entities around the world that have done so. So the question is, what's the difference? Why do you even need a definition of anti-Semitism? And for those of us who have had to deal with the purging of Jewish students at USC and other anti-Semitic incidents at local universities in the UC system and across the country, I cannot tell you how often I've heard from university officials, oh, if we only had a working definition of anti-Semitism, we can do a better job at training our local police. We can do a better job of bringing it to the campus, of dealing with intimidation, with the bullying. Well, now there is a growing international acceptance of this definition, and we hope that tonight's meeting will also spur people from administrators to teachers and to parents, as well as students, to understand that definition. I think we can also say the following basic points. Number one, when we're talking about, God forbid, the physical threats made against Jewish people, whether it's on social media, whether it's dropped letters by Goyim International or just in the street, we of course have to do everything necessary to make sure that our children and our institutions are physically safe from that kind of threat. In addition to that, and I think this is really the key point, when we can perhaps have a separate meeting to discuss what I think at the end of the day will be the most important achievement of all. And that is, we have to replace the negative stereotypes, the poison that's being ingested on social media 24/7 by young people from sophisticated bigots, racists, anti-Semites, and their ilk. The social media today is functioning as an accelerant for the kinds of hate that have come back to haunt not only the Jewish community, but other minorities as well. We need to have accountability from those companies. And when necessary, we need to go to our elected officials to force them to do more to end the 24/7 attacks against minorities and the recruitment that they're able to do among other young people. But the most important thing I believe we can all do here in Los Angeles for the future generations is to destroy those stereotypes. We need to move also beyond just learning historic facts. And I'm with the Simon Wiesenthal Center, a Holocaust institution. We've had 7.5 million people come through the Museum of Tolerance. Most importantly is we need to find the shared values that all decent people in Los Angeles, families who are struggling to ensure a better future for their kids, we need to demystify the other communities. And of course, you can't teach religion in a school setting, but there's nothing to stop an outing from school groups with their teachers to go to houses of worship. There's nothing to stop students from inviting fellow students to come and enjoy a Hanukkah or Purim parade. And maybe most important, there's nothing to stop young people and their families from working with groups like Food on Foot in West Hollywood and others who are trying to help the homeless and those who are less fortunate. In the best way to defeat the bigots, the racists, and the anti-Semites is to be proud of who we are as Jews, to explain what makes us different, and beyond that, to celebrate those values as Americans and as decent human beings that bring us together. We have tremendous potential. I'm so impressed by ICANN's lineup tonight and by the presence of the leadership of the LAUSD. We're on the cusp, I hope, of going from just worrying about those hate crimes and against BDS to taking over the narrative, changing it from the negative, and leaving the hate in the rear view mirror of the next generation. Thank you.
Rabbi, thank you so much for those comments and for joining us here this evening for this important event. I know you have a busy schedule, so we'll let you go, and thank you again for your participation. All right. So next up, we have, I believe it is Jennifer, to give some comments about your experience as a teacher and a parent at LAUSD. So I'll let you go ahead and take it from here.
Yes, thank you so much, Dylan, for calling on me again. I represent so many different groups, and I am so proud. I've been teaching in Los Angeles Unified, as you already heard, for 23 years. Today, I would like to share with you a couple of personal anecdotes that shed light onto the disturbing reality of anti-Semitic bigotry that I have encountered, both as an employee of LAUSD and as a concerned mother. I believe it is important to bring these stories to light so that we may address and rectify the issues together. I'm a mother and an elementary teacher with more than 23 years in the district. Though I take the same days of religious observance off every year, it has happened more than once that school administrators have questioned my absences for religious observances, suggesting they doubted me. I've even been asked why other Jewish educators had different religious practices from mine, implying that I was making excuses or expecting me to speculate about other people's religious observance, which I would never do. So, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is supposed to protect employees from discrimination based on religion, and the Title VII requires reasonable religious accommodation. But I was unsure about how to protect these rights. I only discovered recently that my experience is hardly unique among Jewish teachers at LAUSD. More alarming to me as a mother, the impact of Jewish hatred extends beyond the workplace and into the lives of our children. For instance, when the rapper Kanye West made repeated anti-Semitic and threatening remarks on social media, it impacted my family. Even though we barely knew who he was, we were shocked to see his delusional hatred promoted on local freeway overpasses and other public spaces. How should I explain this to my children? My son, a young boy, soon experienced rejection from his peers simply for wearing Adidas pants, which has been associated with the artist's hateful remarks. It pains me to witness my son defend his religion and fear the effects of social media on his personal fashion style. A young child should feel free to wear what he wishes without having to take anti-Semitism into an account. These experiences highlight a much larger issue. The underreporting of anti-Semitic incidents within LAUSD creates a massive discrepancy between what is documented and the true reality. The district's Incident System Tracking Accountability Report Program, otherwise known as ISTAR, does not even include anti-Semitism or religion as one of its 53 preset categories for characterizing incidents. This means that the district currently has no system in place to record and address events that target Jewish students, staff, and community members. And it's well known among administrators that they are better off not drawing attention to their schools for having incidents of any kind. This leads to massive underreporting and seeming dismissiveness. Students, staff, and families may report incidents to the principal, but the principal may avoid reporting. And even if the principal wishes to report an incident as Jew hatred, there is no way to do so using the ISTAR. So we cannot ignore the urgency of this matter any longer. We must find ways to come together and support one another while keeping our focus on the future. It is essential that we invest in education for administrators, teachers, parents, students, and community members to build a future we can be proud of. By fostering understanding, empathy, and respect, we can pave the way for positive outcomes. Creating change will require hard work and perseverance, but I am hopeful that together we can build the foundation for a strong future. Let us stand united against bigotry and discrimination, ensuring that our schools become safe spaces where every individual is valued and respected. We need to find ways to come together and support each other and keep the focus on the future. In order to have positive outcomes, we must invest now in education for administrators, teachers, parents, students, and communities to build a future that we will actually be proud of. That will take hard work and perseverance, but I'm hopeful that together we can accomplish building the foundation for a strong future. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. And we have another Jennifer with us this evening, Jennifer Epstein. We'll also give a parent testimony and experience fantasy.
Hi.
Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jennifer, and I'm here today as a parent and as an educator. I have been a teacher in LAUSD for 23 years. I am also a mass shooting survivor. I worked at the Jewish Community Center in 1999 when a man came in and shot at us only because we were Jewish. This changed my life forever, to say the least. I am worried about the anti-Semitism that is happening in our schools and the lack of education on anti-Semitism. We need to make a change. A little bit about me. I came from an Argentinian Jewish family and I'm first born in America. My mom used to always tell me when I was young that she moved here from Argentina so that her children could have religious freedom, because in Argentina there was a great deal of anti-Semitism, and there still is. But there really is a great deal of anti-Semitism here now. I have experienced so much hatred just for being Jewish throughout my life and in my career. As an educator, I have been described as an Argentinian Jew. Please tell me what that looks like. I also have been yelled at for leaving early from a 2-hour meeting on a Yom Kippur Eve, even though I spoke to my admin before the meeting explaining I needed to leave, but he needed to make a statement that I was leaving early. The list goes on, but what hurts me the most is seeing my daughters, who are in 5th and 10th grade at LAUSD schools, experiencing so much hatred and anti-Semitism. My girls have been victims of hate for being Jewish. Some of these examples include hate flyers with swastikas posted at their school in a predominantly Jewish area, their friends making fun of them for being Jewish and bullying them online. An example of this is when my daughter was cyberbullied in her prior school for being Jewish and told that she was a cheap Jew and that no one liked her because she was a Jew. My older daughter has been asked by high school teachers, "Oh, are you Jewish?" with a negative annotation because of our Jewish last name. We have a talk about anti-Semitism at least once a month in our household, depending on the events occurring in their lives. My daughter has cried to me on numerous occasions asking, why do they hate me because I'm Jewish? It is heartbreaking to see my kids having to experience more hate and anti-Semitism than I ever did as a kid. We need to do something about this and take action to educate our students along with our staff. It is not okay that this is still happening in our schools today in the year 2023. I feel as though the district makes an effort to create resolutions, like a moment of silence for Holocaust Day. But as a parent and teacher, that did not happen in all schools, and really it all depends on the administration. How are we enforcing these resolutions, and who is making sure that it's happening at every school? We need to do better, and if we do not educate our students, history is bound to repeat itself. We really need to put importance to this as it is becoming a normal part of our society, which is truly scary. I hope that we can work together to find a way to eliminate anti-Semitism in our schools. Thank you so much.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us and for your participation, and we look forward to working with you moving forward, as with all parents and teachers here who are with us this evening. So next up, we have on the agenda, I believe it is our friend Matt from the ADL. All right, Matt, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Friedman. I'm Senior Associate Regional Director for ADL Los Angeles. And I'm also a LAUSD parent of 2 kids in the school system. So I'm going to be speaking and presenting about the current statistics that we have about anti-Semitism, both in the LA area, California, and then nationally. So bear with me 1 second, please. In the meantime, I will continue with, I'll introduce you a little bit. It's just uploading.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess there's not an easy way just to share from the screen with this. So a little bit of background about ADL. I'm sure many of you are aware of the ADL, Anti-Defamation League. We were founded in 1913 in Chicago. We've been around for now over a century. Our mission is to stop anti-Semitism, or actually to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment for all. We have 5 offices here in California, the Los Angeles office being the largest. The LA region covers LA County, the Inland Empire, Riverside, and Kern, and San Bernardino County as well. So we're headquartered in New York, and we have offices all over the country, about 25 across the country. And so we've been doing anti-Semitic audits for many, many years, since 1979, which I'll get to in a moment to talk about some of our statistics. Appreciate up. Here we go. So. All right. So gave you a little bit of background already about ADL, or where we are offices. We have something called the Center on Extremism, incidentally, which is always putting out reports on extremism, anyone who's trying to subvert the democratic process to promote their own views, and anyone engaging in violence. So you can see some examples of that. We just put out a report that came out last week that maybe some folks were referencing earlier. It's called Hate in the Golden State, which is talking about the extremism that we've seen in the last 2 years, like 2021, 21, 22, where we have seen it, the types of examples, and some policy recommendations as well. So as we all know, and I heard folks talk a little bit about some recent incidents, we know words have consequences. So I heard already a reference to Kanye West, or formerly Kanye West. And then we saw, many of us remember back in October on the 405, we saw these banners being dropped over the freeway. These are white supremacists, the folks who did this, but they have no problem quoting and making common cause with an African-American man. So they said, honk if you know Kanye is right about the Jews. And then they have their website on there. I don't bother looking them up. I don't recommend it. But these are folks that have been putting out those flyers that we've seen all over the city, all over the region for over a year now. People get them on their front lawns, usually in a plastic baggie, weighted down with gravel or birdseed or sand. So these are just some examples of the type of propaganda activities we've seen in the past year just in LA. And of course, words escalate. And we saw just in February, a few months ago, sadly, 2 men shot Orthodox Jewish men in the Pico Robertson area by someone who was not a white supremacist, but did have some of that very propaganda on him and was echoing a lot of that rhetoric. So in terms of what we are seeing today with statistics, so as I mentioned earlier, we have been doing the audit of anti-Semitic incidents at ADL since 1979. So not since we've been founded in 1913, but for quite a while. And over the last 10 years, you can see the chart on my left. We went from 751 incidents in 2013, and they kept increasing till we have this past year was over 3,000 incidents in 2022, which is by far the highest number on record. And the past 5 years generally every year has been the highest number on record, unfortunately. In California, we saw in 2022 518 incidents recorded across the state, as opposed to the year before, which was 267. So that was a 41% increase in California between 2021 and 2022. And just to correct, I think someone had earlier mentioned that California had the largest number of anti-Semitic incidents. That's actually New York has the largest number. California, though, was in second place, a record that I don't think any of us should be proud of, according to our statistics. And when I'm talking about anti-Semitic incidents, to be clear, I'm talking about criminal and non-criminal acts. So criminal acts including assaults, vandalisms that we see on different locations, Jewish locations, non-Jewish locations, as well as harassment, which can be criminal harassment, but also in many cases we're talking about non-criminal hate speech. So when LAPD, for example, or the Sheriff's Department is talking about hate crimes, those are things that just have a criminal element. So we're talking about things that may not rise to criminal element. In California, we saw the AG's office puts out a hate crime report every year. And the last year that we have numbers on record, which was 2021, we saw that anti-Jewish hate crimes in California rose 32.3% from 2020 to 2021. So we don't yet have the 2022 numbers, but just to give you some correlation that we do see the increase in numbers, not just in terms of anti-Semitic incidents, but also in crimes. So for the last few years, you can sort of see the record. From 2020, we had over 2,000. Last year, or 2021, I should say, we had 2,700, over 2,700, and then almost 1,000 more last year in 2022. So these are, again, total incidents that you can see on the chart. The light blue are cases of harassment, which is, again, can include hate speech, non-criminal threats. Then the next largest category is vandalism, graffiti, anti-Semitic graffiti, and then assault is the smallest category in red at the top. We had 111 incidents of assault in 2022, and we use the broad law enforcement definition of assault. So those are inclusive of all sorts of acts where there was bodily harm up to including murder. And by state, you can see across the country how many cases we had per state. So as I mentioned, New York was in the lead, as it typically is, with 580 in 2022, followed by California, then New Jersey. California, New York, and New Jersey are typically the top three, then Florida, then Texas. So as you would imagine, states with the largest populations also tend to report the most anti-Semitic incidents, and also typically have largest Jewish populations as well. And when we look at anti-Semitic incidents and we then break them down by where they took place, you can see that the largest plurality of the incidents that we tracked were in public areas. So just on the street, in the city, anywhere, just out and about, followed then by home and housing, residences. Then the third largest category would be Jewish institutions like synagogues, Jewish nonprofits, Jewish schools, then followed by non-Jewish schools. And you can sort of see how we break it down. The smallest number that we recorded were 5 in cemeteries last year. So cemetery vandalisms, defacements. And in terms of the LA region, which I mentioned earlier is a 5-county area, what we've seen in the last 5 years, again, last year was the highest on record that we saw. We saw 237 anti-Semitic incidents in the LA region last year, a significant increase from previous years, though they've all been elevated in the last few years. Something that we know, and I think many of you will remember, what happens in Israel impacts the rise in anti-Semitism. So going back now 2 years, we remember when we had the conflict between Hamas in the Gaza Strip and the IDF. So just to, again, demonstrate that correlation, we saw a significant rise day to day in anti-Semitic incidents reported to ADL in May 2021 during that conflict. So compared to the previous year, there's a dark blue line that was the same date in 2020. The yellow line above them with the spikes was the dates in 2021. So we saw a significant increase back in 2021 when we saw that conflict. And we know that it even escalated beyond just hate speech and demonstrations to assaults here in Los Angeles. Most infamously, the attack on La Cienega, the sushi restaurant, where folks who we believe were at an anti-Israel protest in Westwood by the Federal Building earlier that day drove around asking who were Jewish, shouting anti-Israel slogans, and then assaulted some gentlemen who were dining outside at a sushi restaurant. So again, words have consequences, and things can unfortunately escalate beyond words. In terms of other things that ADL tracks in some of our statistics, we do keep track of anti-Semitic attitudes. And this is, again, something we've been doing for a very long time, trying to get a sense of what percentage, as much as we can quantify, of Americans have anti-Semitic attitudes. So we did this most recent survey this past fall, and it was like September and October of 2022. And we found that over 3/4 of Americans, 85%, believe at least one anti-Jewish trope that was presented to them. So they said that we gave them a statement about Jews, and most of they were anti-Semitic tropes. And if they went, it was either they strongly agreed, disagreed, strongly disagreed, right? 20% of Americans that we surveyed, so there were 11 tropes that were within a set of other questions that were asked or statements. 20% of Americans believe in 6 or more of those tropes, which is typically when we say if you believe in 6 or more of those, which is a majority, you have significant anti-Semitic beliefs. So when we did this survey last in 2019, we found 11% of Americans believed in 6 or more tropes. But when we did this past fall, it jumped up to 20%, which is very significant and very concerning for us. We also, this past year, when we did the survey, we asked people about their anti-Israel attitudes. We found that 40% of people that we surveyed at least slightly believe that Israel treats Palestinians like Nazis treated the Jews. And that we found that 18% of people who we surveyed reported that they are uncomfortable spending time with a person who supports Israel. So you can find all of this report on our website as well and gets a little bit deeper into the data set. These are some examples of the statements that people agreed or disagreed with. And the one that most people thought was mostly or somewhat true, for example, at the top, was Jews stick together more than other Americans, like we're clannish. So you can just sort of see that breakdown. And again, this is all on our website. I'm not going to go through all of the statements, but you can sort of see what they are. And again, if you could see the most recent survey, 2022, we saw, again, a very big jump. 20% of people surveyed had very strong anti-Semitic attitudes that believed 6 out of 11 of those tropes. When we started doing this survey back in 1964, we had 29% of people were believing that. The last time it was at 20% was in 1992. So it went down quite a bit. 2014 was the lowest we had on record when we would do the survey was 9%, just to give you some sense. I've heard some stories already this evening about horrific anti-Semitic bullying issues that people are dealing with their kids in their schools, in their workplaces. ADL is there. We are here to help, and we are happy to reach out on your behalf, but we need to know about it. So don't assume LA Unified is necessarily letting us know, just like any other, we'd reach out quite a bit to LA Unified about these issues, but don't assume they're going to tell us necessarily. If you want to report an incident, you can go to our website and report an anti-Semitic incident, and we can potentially help you out. We reach out to your school, talk about anti-bias resources that we have for school communities to create more inclusive communities, do trainings, or simply just so schools are aware that someone is monitoring and knows what's going on and is watching the issue. Just to let us know. So I would encourage that. There's some other resources here that I will be happy to share with Dylan after the presentations are all concluded, and he can share those widely, just about calendars of observance. We have something called Antisemitism Uncovered, which is a really good comprehensive resource, not really for younger kids, but for adults and older teens, that they can gets into the history of anti-Semitism, the most common tropes, where they come from, and so forth. So just to recommend those. And I don't think we really have time for questions, but my contact is there. People can email me if they have questions afterwards, and we're happy to help out. So thank you very much.
All right, great. Thank you, Matt, and thank you for a great presentation. And you have gotten us back on time. We're only 5 minutes behind schedule, so thank you so much. So next up, we have Sharon, a great Israeli-American mother from the San Fernando Valley, and I know she has children in LAUSD, and I think she has some interesting stories to share with us. So go ahead, take it away.
Hi, good evening, everyone. After all this disturbing data, I hope to shine a little bit of a ray of light for you. My name is Sharon. I'm an Israeli immigrant, an American citizen. I lived in LA for the past 15 years. It's where I started my family. And today I'm a parent of 3 children under the age of 10, all elementary age. I'm so grateful for this opportunity tonight to tell you about our community initiative. And in the light of all these recent events, myself and many other parents are deeply concerned about the rise of hate crimes. And I feel like, especially now, post-pandemic, we all seek a sense of belonging. And we come to a point where many Jewish students feel isolated or afraid to express their identity. So we believe that with that in mind, all cultures should be uplifted and valued. And that's the mindset that driven us to create Blue and White Club, or Moadon Kahol Lavan, at Woodlake Elementary Charter. So this started as a group chat and spontaneous gatherings around holidays, and it's now an official school club where we meet once a week on campus. We're about to wrap up a full year of operation, 100% volunteer-based, operated and funded. It's open to all students, TK through 5, and through art and storytelling, we kind of focus on teaching the historical tradition and core moral value that obviously correspond with Jewish values, like Tikkun Olam, repairing the world through community service. We count our good deeds, mitzvahs. We always like to help other people, to give to those in need. Treat our friends the way we want to be treated, respect our elders, respect our parents. And beyond all these beautiful benefits of creating and instilling those values, there are so many reasons to why this club was so necessary. For starter, and that was my biggest motivation, Blue and White Club promotes positive image for the Israeli Jewish community. And unfortunately, there are so many negative stereotypes and misconceptions surrounding this group that I'm part of, that I experienced firsthand. And I feel that by showcasing the rich history and the culture of Israel, we can dispel this myth and to promote better and accurate understanding. Israelis are often judged to be loud or aggressive, but what they're really missing is the ability to see the memories behind it. Perhaps an adaptation, a surviving mechanism for living under constant existent threat. Additionally, I feel like as parents and educators, it is up to us to set the tone on how our children should treat others, and we should lead by example. In our club, we prioritize the importance of showing respect, inclusivity to all people. It's open to all backgrounds, and we create a better community. It's important to emphasize that it's open for all. We welcome anyone who wishes to learn more about Jewish culture, history, or just to socialize. Many kids, non-Jewish kids, are just joining us because they want to socialize. And it's a safe space. Everyone feels welcome. and it fosters a greater unity. I want to share one of my favorite concepts with you guys. It's a great concept in Judaism that learning is a constant, never-ending journey. You can learn from anyone or anything. So in the world where it feels almost taboo to talk about race, culture, or religion, I invite you to reconsider this. I think that we are the change, and through learning, views will change. So we take those teachable moments. We're showing, if you'll show other people in those moments that you're nothing like what they believe, I think that you change the whole world. So finally, just let me stress the importance of community involvement. I wasn't always an involved parent. I work full time. I have 3 kids. But I feel like this is something everyone can do. This club was not possible without the support of and the participant of the entire community, the teacher, the school. I'm so grateful and humbled by the amount of community support we got. We started with, we expected 15 to 20 kids. We now have a consistent amount of 60 plus kids every week, and we have over 150 participants at our special events. So I urge you to take an action and an active role in combating, and this is my message to all the parents, in combating anti-Semitism in your school and your community. And my vision is to further develop this program, to make it available district-wise, to be replicated by any other school where there's interest or hate crimes. Feel free to reach out to me. I would love to talk more about it. And we want to create an accepting and safe environment for all. And thank you so much for your time and attention.
All right. Thank you, Sharon. It's a great program, and we hope that other LUSD schools will consider adopting it. I think that one of the big challenges we have is raising awareness about our various cultures and the diversity of Jewish identity. So I appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's great. And next up, we will have Joanna Mendelson from the Jewish Federation of Greater LA. Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you so much. Great pleasure to be here tonight. And I can speak from the heart. I am a mother of 3 girls who are currently in LAUSD. So I know very well some of the challenges and some of the ways forward. Before I begin, I also want to say that I have the privilege of taking this past year to Israel. Scott Schmirelson with the Jewish Federation, he joined us with the Jewish Federation and Jewish Caucus Mission to Israel. And this upcoming year, we are going to be joined this summer by Nick Melvoin. So we have incredible leaders in our midst who are very supportive of the work that we're doing and dedicated to elevating the Jewish voice and ensuring and protecting our Jewish identity. So I'm with the Jewish Federation. A little bit about, we are the heartbeat of Jewish Los Angeles. Our vision, our goal is to convene the Jewish community, to strengthen our voices, to engage across diverse communities, and to really show up in this space. So we have 3 major pillars in which we're involved in. The first one is ensuring the Jewish future. And it's really the Lador Vador. How do we invest in this next generation? How do we create and enrich Jewish identity with education, with programming, with camps, with an investment in all forms of learning? Our second pillar is dedicated to caring for Jews in need. And I'll speak to that in some of the data points that we see in our own community, in our own backyard here in Los Angeles, and how that relates to those who are most vulnerable that are part of our community. And finally, I am the Senior Vice President of Community Engagement, which works to advance Israel advocacy, our work in government advocacy, our education on Israel, around Israel and Israel support of Israel and becoming a strong ally for Israel, and various forms such as that. So one of the things I was, Dylan, and a huge thanks to ICANN and Dylan Hosier for convening tonight, this evening, for us to come together and to understand the things and the resources that are not only affecting our community, affecting some of our students, but some of the pathways forward, some of the great initiatives that have been launched that really can help safeguard and protect our students and our Jewish voices. So the Jewish Federation spearheaded a study of Jewish Los Angeles. This is a study that really underscored the need to identify the various ways in which the Jewish community exists. So this is the first time we did this survey in the last 30 years. And it really was an incredible eye-opener to the demographics of our community that kind of shake up a little bit of the narrative of being in a certain kind of box, fitting a certain demographic, looking in a certain appearance and so forth, coming from a particular economic stature. So I'm going to go briefly through this. This was a beautiful partnership with the University of Chicago, as well as Brandeis Bardeen Institute and the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles, and trying to understand a little bit about the Jewish study of Los Angeles. So here we go. The Federation did this study on behalf of the entire community. Again, it was the first one conducted in over 25 years. And essentially the data pulled from 4,000 households in the summer of 2021. And we sought to better understand the issues around human services, around the demographics, because to understand our community better, to understand the makeup, the faces and the cultures that come and make up the Jewish community, we needed some of that data to help us understand the makeup. So what we've essentially identified in this study are a number of areas. The first was Jewish identity, and understanding how do people engage? How do the Jewish community engage in Jewish life? Does it exist in the synagogue makeup, or is it through other means? Where are the feelings of belonging? How do they get a sense of self and community? What are the decisions that are being made around Jewish education, around a day school education or public school education, and so forth? And what are the attitudes towards Israel? We also uncovered some of the human service dimensions, as well as some of the demographics. You might find it interesting that in Los Angeles, our community predominantly resides in 3 major regions. In fact, 75% of our Jewish population actually lives within in 3 regions: the West Side, the West Valley, and the Central Metro and Mid LA. So this includes, if we're looking at our catchment area, it extends all the way from Amarillo, Glendale to North Counties and up to Riverside, Redondo. And we divided the areas into 6 major geographic areas. Now, if you look closely, very hard to see in the screen, but the report is also available on Study of Jewish Los Angeles. Each dot represents 100 households. So you can see where you can hardly make out this distinction between one dot to another. That's where a heavy concentration of the Jewish population resides. And let's talk about some of the most important numbers that came out of this report. So if you zoom into the Jewish individuals, we have currently about 564,000 Jews who live in Los Angeles. Now that number hasn't really increased that much over a number of years, over the last 30 years. In fact, that number went up very, very slightly by 9%. But perhaps more importantly is the fact that the number of people living in Jewish households has gone up by 25%. So what does that mean? When you're thinking about what impacts a family here in Los Angeles, the base of those who are impacted has expanded up to 737 people in Jewish households. So those are something to consider when you're talking about the impact on the Jewish community. It expands to many more households and other communities. And also notable for this conversation is that we have approximately 100,000 Jewish children living in Los Angeles. So this is an important demographic for us to reach. And when we talk about instilling the Jewish future, when we're talking about shaping hearts and minds of our next generation, we have a sizable number of our population nationwide based here in our backyard in Los Angeles. Of note, two things. One, we have an aging population. We can see that 48% of Los Angeles Jewish adults are 55 years old and older. And this is larger, this is more significant than if you look at the LA County statistics in general. Also, what's notable is that you can see the ages of the children include 40% of the children in Los Angeles are teens. So in a few years, we will have a very sizable adult population. 40% of them are teens, and that's a population to look at currently. And a lot of the investment that Federation is engaged in right now is to invest in the teen community, in that population, whether or not it's mental health, suicide prevention, identity, Jewish identity, investment in opportunities to engage in Israel or Jewish learning. And this is one of the things that strike me most notably. So for 21 years, I worked in domestic terrorism. I monitored white supremacists and neo-Nazis in my previous work, and tracking really the underbelly of our country. And one of the things that really, really stood out time and time again was the kind of conspiracy theory, the macro conspiracy theory that Jews not only are controlling and manipulating things at the highest levels, but that they have an exorbitant amount of wealth, and that they are manipulating through their wealth and through their puppeteering all the strings of society. And so you might find it interesting to note that 1 in 5 of the Los Angeles Jewish population here in our backyard actually is just managing to make ends meet. So they've self-identified, according to this study, that they are struggling. They're barely able to make ends meet. And in fact, 1% cannot make ends meet. We find this population homeless. And so the Federation is invested in helping to uplift that community. But I find that stat very important because it really kind of puts some of those stereotypes, some of the anti-Semitic tropes that we hear, and it challenges them by offering some data sets. I think we can also see that COVID was a real accelerant in terms of those who found that their situations have worsened. And we saw that a lot of 1 in 5 Jewish adults stated that expenses of Jewish life was really an element that really limited their involvement in Jewish activities. And another area to identify is the diversity that we have living in this beautiful diversity, the tapestry of the Jewish community. That half of the households that we have here in Los Angeles include an immigrant to the United States or someone who has a parent who's an immigrant. So when it comes to understanding our own selves as an immigrant community, or kind of a generation away from immigrant community, it gives us a really good understanding for and empathy for those who find themselves targeted by the waves of xenophobia that we currently have. And also it's notable that we have the largest Persian population outside of Iran, 22,000 Persians living in our backyard. We have a sizable Israeli population, again, one of the largest outside of Israel, with 27,000 Israelis. And this also mirrors our Latino population, those who come from South America, Central America, any other country around the world, and as they identify as Latino. And the largest population is our Russian community at 48,000. But we also have a very large population of individuals who identify as Jews of color, whether or not they are African American or Asian or Latino, they identify as Jews of color. And so when we're thinking about perhaps the common Ashkenazi normative way of viewing our communities, this is a way to kind of shift some of that narrative to understand that the demographics in our community represent a very, very diverse and beautiful community. And then finally, to note, the work that is being done. I think we heard it from many of the speakers that preceded me, that education is really the antidote to addressing some of this anti-Semitism. It's about education, it's about awareness, but it's also about bridge building. How do we reach out to others? How do we reach out to those outside of the Jewish community to help explain, to help them bring them along in our journey to understand our deeply rich heritage, culture, and backgrounds, and start engaging and having those dialogues. The Jewish Federation is working very closely to work on those avenues and strengthen the ties within communities across Los Angeles. So I leave you with my contact information. If ever we can be of assistance, if ever we can be of help in the work that's being done, please feel free to reach out to me. And with that, I turn it back over to Dylan.
All right. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you so much for a great presentation. And you kept us on time. So I really appreciate that. All right. So next up, we have Judy Chasen from LAUSD. So Judy, when you are ready, there you are.
I am ready. Let me see if I can queue up this PowerPoint here.
Right.
While I do that, let me thank everybody so much for being here today. I want to thank all of our parents who are here from LA Unified, who are, and certainly my colleagues, in the district. And my PowerPoint isn't going to work, so we're just going to move on. So I do want to thank everybody for this very important conversation on how we can best support our children and how we can best support our schools through education. My name is Judy Chasen. I am with LA Unified's Office of Human Relations, Diversity, and Equity. And it is, we are part of Student Health and Human Services. And the Office of Human Relations, Diversity, and Equity really strives, our focus is on anything that really interferes with the learning and working environment. So we're kind of like, do a lot of anti-bias work, a lot of elevating identities, offering resources for schools. I was asked to speak tonight very specifically on how parents can respond if their child does come home and said that there is an incident that has happened at their school. So that's going to kind of be my focus here. We work very closely with a lot of our partners. ADL, a lot of this work I'll be talking about tonight is based on their leadership from Museum of Tolerance and, of course, our colleagues across the country. So I think that really, when we think about this as a parent, like the worst thing, the highest level of anxiety is when we get that call from the principal that something happened at school, or our child comes home and says something happened. Parents' anxiety, our anxiety goes way, way up when we hear these kinds of things. So first thing, when your child comes home, tells you something happened, first check in with yourselves, right? How do I feel? What is my fear? And what is coming up for me around this? I think it's very scary when we think about what might happening with our children when they are away from us. Like when they're at home, we feel pretty secure what's going on. But they're going to school, there's always a little bit of anxiety, whether they're at school, whether they're at the mall or at a friend's house, wherever. There's this little bit of anxiety that happens when they are outside of our watchful eyes. So when our child comes home, first thing we want to do is keep ourselves centered. The reason is so that we can be better positioned to listen and to learn and to listen for our children. Take a breath, maybe two, whatever we need. Okay. And ask, what do I need? What do I need to do in order to have this conversation? The most important piece of this, I believe, is for us as parents, how do we listen in a way so that our children can talk? Because the more that we talk, the less our children are going to talk. Silence is golden when we're trying to hear from our children what happened at school today. So if your child comes home, they say something happened, take that breath and say, okay, tell me more about it. What happened before that? What happened after that? Were there helpers here? How did that make you feel? What happened around you, right? So we really want to be listening and finding out what our children need from us. If your child tells you that they saw a swastika, somebody's drawing a swastika on their notebook, or they made an anti-Semitic comment, mind you, I want to be very clear. I'm focusing more on language. If it's something very extreme, like there's physical violence, of course, we're going to take a very different route. This is more of those slurs, those comments that are really offensive, very hurtful, but not at that, but definitely not at the criminal level. Ask your child, what do they need from you? You might have, if your child is older, if you have a secondary student, and I heard one of our previous speakers was talking about how to equip children to handle these incidents on their own. And I say that with a lot of caution because I don't think it's the children's job to handle this. But if you have a teenager, your teenager may want to handle it themselves the first time. So I say, okay, honey, we're going to give you some tools, go bring you back to school. Try this. If it happens again, let me know. I'm going to get involved. I'm always here in your court. The younger the child, the more quickly you're going to get involved. And of course, the more serious the incident, the more quickly you're going to get involved. Okay? Children are bombarded with information from all kinds of different sources. The littles are not always able to process this, and they don't realize the significance of some of the things that they're drawing, some of the things that they're saying. So we want to tear this out. We're going to respond very differently to something that happens at the first grade level because they're just mimicking something that they've heard or seen, as opposed to somebody at the high school level. We expect them to be a lot more thoughtful and intentional in their actions. So let's say that you're communicating with the school. All right, so now you've got the information. The school needs to know what is happening so that they can be equipped to respond. We do have a mechanism in which we can document incidents of religious-based discrimination or bullying. So we do have that capability. The principals have it. If the principals get a report, for us it's an allegation. They are supposed to investigate that allegation and take the necessary actions to both ensure that your child is protected and that the other children receive appropriate education or consequences. First, we are an educational institution, so our best tool is education. We've heard this said many times tonight, that education is the key. So a couple questions that we will ask them, these are restorative questions. So if I was interviewing a child and trying to find out what was going on, first thing I say is what happened, right? And you can use these with your own children as well. So what happened? What were you thinking at the time? What have you thought about since? Who has been affected? In what ways? And what do you need to do to make things right? Restorative practices are about recognizing the harm that we have done and putting corrective actions into place. So that might mean that they need to apologize. It might mean that they need to learn more about those symbols that they are drawing on their notebook to find out what that symbol really means, not just take a word from some of their classmates. Right? I do want to suggest one thing is when you do contact your principal, be as factual as possible. So for instance, if you were to call the school and say, my child was bullied, okay, that's a very important piece of information. And let's compare that to, my child said that Tommy pushed him down during lunch and made this particular comment. So the more information, the more factual information that you can give the principal or your school site administrator, the better equipped they're going to be to respond to that allegation. So that was quick, just a couple quick tips. And I do encourage you, please, to visit the website of Office of Human Relations, Diversity and Equity. Just put that in Google, LAUSD, Human Relations. We have a wealth of resources on our website, and we're always looking to increase this. We're working on our calendar of events, which comes out every year, and we'd like to have classroom lessons that go along with all of the holidays and events that are on there. So when the teacher's there and they're talking about the Holocaust, they're talking about Yom Kippur, they're talking about Rosh Hashanah, they're talking about all these different events, that the teacher has a really quick PowerPoint that they could just pull up or they can download, and they can have a really meaningful conversation with their students. So thank you. My contact information will be available to you, and absolutely anything that we can do on behalf of LA Unified to support you and your families, please don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Judy, thank you. Judy, thank you so much for a phenomenal presentation. And if you're able to stick around for a few questions towards the end, you're welcome to stay on. And then I see the school board member, Schmierelson, is still with us as well. So hopefully he'll be able to stick on. Good to see you there, sir.
And we do have Holocaust Memorial Day on the calendar. So
okay,
somebody asked that in the chat. I can tell that right now. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Judy. And next up.
Okay.
Sorry, I removed myself. Hold on, Judy. There we go. All right, so Lori, you are with us. And I do want to thank you. You're on the East Coast, so thank you for staying up late for us. And we're really looking forward to your presentation. So I'll let you take it from here. Do you have a PowerPoint or anything that you need to put up? Nope.
Just me talking.
Good, beautiful.
Right. Thanks for inviting me, Dylan. I appreciate it. I am the legal director of the Deborah Project, which is a public interest law firm. We represent people who are being discriminated against in educational settings because they're Jewish and or pro-Israel. So I am the voice of pessimism, not optimism. Everybody so far tonight has talked about positive visions and solutions. And I'm going to be negative here. It's true, education is the solution, but I'm going to put an additional and imperative word there. Accurate education is the solution. Unfortunately, too often there is inaccurate information, in particular about Jews and the Jewish state, and that is happening increasingly in elementary and secondary schools. It's not only happening at the college campuses anymore, it is happening actively in the schools. And it's a tremendous concern. It's scary. And I can't tell you enough how important it is to assess carefully what you're hearing about what's being taught in your schools, because there is a form of ethnic studies that is and has been virulently anti-Israel. And it's a huge problem, and it's a problem in particular in California, although the disease is spreading eastward. So I am very actively engaged right now. The Deborah Project is in looking at school districts in California and what is happening there. There are people we've heard from who are generally supportive, and I think they want to see what's best, but there is a countervailing influence that is, if you are pushing the Jewish view, if you are complaining about anti-Semitism, you are sotto voce racist, or sometimes it's right out loud. And that's a really scary thing to stand up against. So the Deborah Project can represent people who have this concern, but you all need to be educated and aware for yourselves, and don't let people tell you that it's not true, it's not happening in the schools. And also, don't let others define for you what anti-Semitism is. And by that I mean, we have heard from some of these people who are trying to insert into the public school curriculum that anti-Zionism, being critical of Israel, is not anti-Semitism. That is not correct. Just being critical of Israel, just like you would be critical of the current president or the past president, doesn't mean you hate the United States. But when there are topics being taught, issues as fact, that Israel is an illegitimate state, that Israelis murder innocent Palestinians, that is anti-Semitism, that is teaching kids to hate Jews in the Jewish state. And the connection should be very easy for people in Los Angeles. It's already been mentioned tonight, the incident at the sushi restaurant in LA during the previous, not this most recent, but the 2 years ago conflict in Gaza. And there was a lot of criticism of Israel, a lot of misinformation about Israel. And there was that caravan of cars that had loudspeakers and waving Palestinian flags, and they were furious at Israel, claiming Israelis murdered innocent children and women. And so those guys that got out of the car at the sushi restaurant, this kosher sushi restaurant, and started yelling, "Who are the Jews?" and then started hitting the Jews. They didn't say, "Who are the Israelis?" They said, "Who are the Jews?" So there is absolutely a nexus there. Don't allow others to tell you, as we've seen in some of these curricular material, as if it's fact, that being anti-Israel is not anti-Semitism. So that's really important. And I need to say that I only recently met Dylan, but during our conversation, I said to him suddenly, I said, "Oh my God, we had a mind meld before we even met each other," because he was suggesting that there's this gap in the approach to civil rights and understanding about civil rights in America. And that gap that we see is for Jews. People don't understand that equal rights means equal for all, including Jews. So if you're being discriminated against, or your children are being discriminated against in the schools, or teachers are being discriminated against because they're Jewish or pro-Israel, you are entitled to raise your voice and demand that your rights be respected. And that's a really hard thing for people to do, particularly with the background that we all have as Jews, when we've learned, generationally, it's been passed down. Don't make a big deal. Don't draw attention to yourself. No, we live in the United States of America. You are entitled to make a big deal when someone treats you wrong, and the treatment is a violation of the law. And an example that I'll give quickly about a case that I had on the East Coast, but it could be anywhere, of a college student. But you'll see where I'm going with this. It's, college, not elementary school, secondary school. The college student who's a very wiry kid. He's lean and about 5'11", very smart, well-educated about Israel. He walked around campus with an Israeli insignia on his sweatshirt. And one day, and this was the very beginning of his freshman year, one day a guy started making comments to him and using profanity about Israel and Zionism and saying, Israel has no right to exist. And our client was ready to engage in discussion, which we Jews like to do. Oh, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Iron Dome. He wanted to have a factual conversation. The other guy, who was much bigger and heavier, said, cut it out, again with the profanity, again saying Israel has no right to exist. And then he shoved our client. Our client then punched the aggressor. He connected really well and knocked out 2 of the guy's teeth. That's a bad result. But the truth of the matter is that the larger guy was the aggressor. And what happened? They suspended immediately our guy, this Jewish kid, and they wouldn't let him on campus. They wouldn't let him Zoom into his classes. And the school had this kangaroo court where they didn't follow their own policies. Universities often have procedures and definitions that don't match up with what we recognize in the adult world. And they decided they were going to expel him. And that's when I was brought in and was advocating for this student. And I had a conversation with the lawyer for the college. And I said to him, if you were to believe what my client is saying, and you have to if you haven't done the investigation yet, which they hadn't, what my client is the victim of a hate crime. And this lawyer laughed. I mean, the idea of a Jew having been the subject of a hate crime was impossible for him to understand. Anyway, it's just, I don't want any of you to think of Jews as victims, but we do have rights and we're entitled to assert them. And it's important that people recognize that. Don't be abashed about it. Doesn't mean everything you think is bad is necessarily illegal. It isn't. A lot of things are just unfair and wrong. But if something crosses over the line of anti-Semitism, you have serious concerns, you should speak to. There are a lot of resources, people who have spoken here tonight. I definitely can help you. I'm sure the Deborah Project will be able to help you. It's a very important position to take. You must be your best advocate and the best advocate for your kids. And so with that, I say good night. I hope there's time for questions. I don't know if there will be, but this has been a pleasure being a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lori. That was an amazing presentation. Really appreciate your thoughts, and we'll do a mind meld anytime. So I'm happy to work with you, and we look forward to it.
Sure.
So thank you again for the presentation. So I think now we are going to move into the Q&A section, and I see that we have board member Schmerelson and Melvoin is back. And I believe we have Judy as well still with us. So I'll add Judy, and then board member Melvoin, are you with us? If you turn your camera on. Not yet. Okay. So we'll put him in the room. Then when he's ready, he can. We'll meet him there. All right. So one question that has come up, if you don't mind, board member Schmelson and Judy, there's a sense and a feeling like Jewish identity isn't well understood in the district, and that the diversity of the Jewish community isn't appreciated or maybe comprehended by faculty or maybe some of the administration. What recommendation do you have? First of all, I guess what would be your perspective on that thought, and what ideas do you have or advice do you have for the community to help better educate about the diversity of the Jewish community? And in particular, just to give a specific example, I think many feel that We're an Israeli-American immigrant advocacy organization, and so there is a sense that it's not safe to be Israeli and be a student at the same time. That's most often on campus. Thank you, Board Member Melvin, for joining. So there's a sense that it's not safe to be Israeli and be a student at the same time, whether it's in college or in public schools. And people take the Israeli Jewish identity and politicize it and put it only in a political box, and say that any rhetoric that's involving Israel or any comments about Israel are political and therefore protected by the First Amendment. But it's kind of ignoring the national origin discrimination aspect that I think we, especially as an immigrant city like LA, we can appreciate for other identities. So what thoughts do you guys have about that concern? Shmilson, if you want to go first, if you have thoughts, or Melvin.
Well, it's very interesting that my district has many Armenian students, and there are lots and lots of meetings held and teacher trainings about the Armenian genocide for our teachers, paid professional development, and a very well done professional development, I must say so myself. I believe we need to do that also for our Jewish students, that people can understand, and teachers especially. They're the ones who are teaching the kids about Jewish life, just like we do with the Armenian kids. And they're very well attended, and I think that would be an excellent start.
That's a great piece of advice. And we actually work very closely with the Armenian community as an organization. And actually, we look up to them as a way forward, because I think the Israeli community is just now getting involved in civics. Melvin, I don't know if you had a thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I also think too that we have to be more vigilant about the line between, like you said, free speech and hate speech, and the targeting of students for their religious or ethnic backgrounds. But I agree with my colleague, that a lot of it starts with teacher training. I alluded in my opening remarks about a salary point class that initially was approved for teachers on how to teach Middle East history, and had kind of morphed into a class for teachers that had explicitly anti-Israel, pro-BDS teachings. And so I think we need to think about how we're educating our educators about what to look for. I know that at the time that the teachers union had the pro-BDS motion that many folks who I know are joining us tonight helped us defeat, there were also some pictures shared of teachers' classrooms that had kind of anti-Israel propaganda. And I think we have to think about and work with our educators in schools to see, this isn't, and see what Deborah was saying earlier, but this isn't, you don't have the same free speech rights that you do outside of a school. And also, even if you do, at the point where you're maybe litigating or taking a divisive posture against a teacher to say, do you or do you not have the right to put up that poster, you've kind of missed the point. The point should be that our educators in our community should feel that we're in a school community where we're comfortable, we're supporting all of our students, and a student, be they a Black student, be they an Armenian student or Jewish student, doesn't feel ostracized by what the teacher is putting up. So I think that that's one of the things that Mr. Schmelson's resolution got at, with the affirming of Jewish students and teachers. And I think that, again, if we've got to a point where we're looking at, well, can the school district discipline that teacher for what they've done? We've already kind of lost that particular debate, because it should be on the front end. Why are teachers feeling that that's appropriate, and how do we work across lines of difference? And I think that's why it's great to have Judy here, because that's a lot of what her office does. So I don't know, Judy, if you want to chime in.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate that. Certainly from the perspective of human relations, I think that really a fundamental part of education is teachers are oftentimes teaching students unlike themselves. Even if you attended that school as a child, you are now much older, you're of a different generation, you're paying your own bills, you're not getting an allowance from your parents anymore. And so we're always needing to build that bridge generationally and culturally, identity, whatever our identities are. And so this is incumbent upon being a good teacher, is reaching out and taking those steps, those strides to understand our students, meet them where they're at, and have an affirming classroom for all identities. Office of Human Relations, Diversity and Equity, we're advocating for identities that none of us share. And so we're always relying upon our communities to help us produce and share quality materials that represent them. And these are for our teachers and our families and our students. It's just something that's the right thing to do.
Dylan, let me also add that I think it's very important that no comments that are racist or sexist ever go unchecked by the teacher should it happen in the classroom. Now, you're not going to start a battle in the classroom over every single thing that's said, but people have to be checked. That's inappropriate. And usually the kids, they'll get it. That's inappropriate. And I, as a principal, I felt my job was to make sure I didn't hear it outside in the cafeteria, by workers, anyone. You have to be vigilant and check people when they make those kind of jokes or comments. You check them. And usually that's enough to make them be aware, hey, I'm out of bounds now.
Okay, I think that's very helpful. I think, Judy, that you mentioned this. One question came in about why do we have off for Armenian genocide, but not for Holocaust remembrance? I know that just in the community, we were hearing a lot of chatter about this. I know you mentioned something about the Holocaust remembrance during your comment.
Sure. We have a calendar of events, and that's not necessarily a day off school. I don't know. I'm sorry why. I know that the community. Oh, guys, someone's about to jump in. Thank you.
Yeah, no. I think it's not. The answer is that a resolution was brought by the board, by Ms. Gomez, actually, who joined us earlier. I think it was the summer of 2020 to commemorate the Armenian genocide through the day off of school, in part because a lot of Armenian students were actually missing school for commemorative events. And the board passed that. I definitely have had comments, and I see them in the live chat as well, about why we don't have it off for Yom HaShoah or Holocaust Remembrance Day. And it's conversations we should have. I think we're also post the Armenian genocide commemoration day off. We've gotten advocacy from the Chinese American community around Lunar New Year. I think Mr. Smells and I have both seen advocacy around that. We've had some folks say, well, isn't it actually better to have kids in school during the commemorative days so that we can teach about the Holocaust and about Armenian genocide and about slavery? So I think these are fair questions. The answer is that it was a board resolution that was passed and then had to be adopted into the calendar. But the advocacy around doing it for the Holocaust is very well received. And, I know the board will be discussing it and finding ways. There is also an international, the UN has an international day of commemorations and remembrance over genocide, which maybe is a way to combine and have one day, because also we don't want students to have too many days off during the school year to think about all these things.
And if I could just add and echo what you're saying, absolutely. I would like to think that this is really an opportunity for education. And I would like to find, how do we recognize these very important things? Missing a day of school is, it's an opportunity where we don't get to teach on that particular day. And we should be talking about this. And this is the place for them to learn.
Yeah. And I also think too, sometimes I fear that when we dedicate something to a day or a week or a month, we abdicate the need to educate kids all the time. So I also don't want it to be a day where, in May, we talk about there was this thing, the Holocaust, and then the 364 days of the year, it's okay to be anti-Semitic. So I do think there's a way to embed this in the curriculum and these teachable moments, and make sure that we're reinforcing this throughout the year, not just, one day in May.
No, not just checking a box.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Perfect.
I did a quick search. We have 34 different days that are associated with Judaism on the calendar.
Yes. Okay, so one other question from Michael Harris. And I think Rabbi Cooper brought this up too from Simon Wiesenthal Center. Question to board members Schmierelson and Melvoin: what would it take? What would be needed from the community to get LUSD to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism? Any thoughts on that? And I think that as we look at the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, it's a useful tool to, I think, understand the various vectors and facets that anti-Semitism can take on depending on who the target is. Again, as an Israeli-American immigrant advocacy organization, we see a lot of rhetoric around Israel being targeted at Israelis in various venues, and then having that be ignored by authorities in whatever jurisdiction it is because it's political, while again ignoring the national origin aspects of discrimination. So what would be needed from the community to get this definition adopted? Schmierelson or Melvoin, either one of you can go first.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to chime in, Scott. I think that this summit was a first step. You know, when I spoke at a similar summit in the city of West Hollywood, I don't know, 8 months ago, Dylan, maybe, it was part of the adoption process for that city. I know that states, I think 30 states, the city of Los Angeles, the city of West Hollywood. So we wanted to educate the community about what's happening in our schools, about advocacy efforts, about what the IHRA definition is, what it is not, right? I think I want to be very clear to our listeners that you can be a critic of the current Israeli government, just like you can be a critic of the American government, without delegitimizing a state's right to existence. And we have to preserve that right, but also know that in my mind, in almost all instances, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And that anti-Semitism, too, is really Jew hate. And I appreciate that we're actually calling it out for what it is, just like we're calling anti-Black racism and Jew hatred. So I think that my answer to Mr. Harris would be, you know, after this, we'll continue. I know there's interest in more. And then it's something that we can work with Dr. Chiasen. It's great that the superintendent was on here. It's something he could bring for the board to adopt, or it's something that the board could bring. And I know Mr. Schmierelson and I will be having conversations about ways to continue the work.
So, Nick, do you see the general counsel weighing in on this for language?
Yeah, and so potentially we could talk to our general counsel about it too, and figure out.
Yes, they have to make sure that every word is correct. Yeah,
sure.
As you can imagine. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, as board member Melvin mentioned, he did participate in the summit in West Hollywood, and that was a prerequisite sort of to have that city adopt the definition. The city of West Hollywood adopted it unanimously. LA followed quickly behind, also unanimously adopting. I know there's some chatter at the county and elsewhere, so I think LUSD would be well in line.
Yeah, and I guess I would say, Dylan, just in terms of what can the community do, you know, three of the board members were on today. There are 7 of us, and the superintendent you know, reports to the board. And so I would say that, you know, it's helpful for the board to have insight into the lived experience of our parents and of our community. So, you know, if I'm your board member, reach out. If Scott's yours, Kelly's, but also to the 4 who weren't able to make it. Or we also have a Brown Act conversation in California. So only 3 of us can kind of gather and talk about substantive stuff at a time. But I would just encourage folks to advocate to their board members. You know, help us spread the word about what we're trying to do.
Perfect. All right. So if you guys want to give closing remarks, we don't have any other questions. I see a lot of similar questions here in the chat, but I think we've covered most of them. So if you want to give either of you or any of you want to give some closing remarks on behalf of LAUSD, that would be great. And then we'll go ahead to my chair and
yeah. I like to say that we have to be vigilant, whether it be in the classroom, in the schoolyard, at a sports event, at schools. We have to be vigilant and catch immediately anti-Semitic, racist comments and make people understand that it's not acceptable. It is not acceptable, but you have to catch them right in the act and let them know. Forcefully and non-violently.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say too, to echo Scott, is, you know, there's an irony in that I remember as a teacher in the district starting 15 years ago, and we heard this from some fellow panelists, that a lot of times swastikas and Jew hatred graffiti was just not even reported. It was either so common, or kids don't know what they're drawing, it's fine. And so the fact that we're seeing an increase in the reporting is, again, ironically, I think, encouraging, because we're taking it seriously, because we're not just brushing it under the rug. We're not painting over it and saying, oh, I have a school in my community, an elementary school, where there was anti-Semitic graffiti a week or two ago, and it sparked a whole conversation with parents. Some of you may be on right now, town halls, and we're not just saying, oh, kids are being kids. No, to Scott's point, we have to express our intolerance right away. I saw in the chat and heard that our incident reporting system doesn't allow for anti-Semitic or Jew hatred as a category. That's something I'd like to look into. I wasn't aware of, so that we can be more prevalent about that. But I do think that, again, we are seeing an increase in the reporting, which means that people are taking it seriously. And now we have to work to be united in our response, and also double down on the education and the support of tolerance and compassion. And I would say even more than tolerance. The last thing I'll say is that tolerance, I think, is a doctrine of strangers. You can tolerate each other without understanding. And what I'd like, and I know what Dr. Chessen and Mr. Schmelson, is to move us beyond tolerance, but compassion and embrace. I don't want you to just tolerate me because I'm a Jew. I want you to appreciate me the way that I appreciate and work with other cultures. And so that is the work of our schools. And I look forward to more of that.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you both. And thank you also to board member Gomez for joining. And I think we will be in touch with the three of you to explore that IHRA definition and other outcomes of the summit. So thank you all. And I think we're going to bring on, again, Mikey and Jennifer just to close us out, and we will say goodnight to the rest. So Jennifer, do you want to go ahead and go first, and then we'll let, are you with us, Jennifer? I think you're frozen. There you are.
Oh, I'm here. Definitely here. Glad to
good.
be here.
So go ahead, and then she'll go first, then we'll take it over to Mikey to close us out.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us and participating tonight. We look forward to your active involvement. We will definitely be having follow-up meetings, next steps, and a bright future, with each and every single one of you. I want you to be well, stay safe, and stay informed. And remember, we're one community, we're one world, and we're all here to help support each other and move us forward in a positive direction. Thank you, everyone, for all your time, involvement, and participation.
Thanks, Jennifer. For me, I just want to make some notes that tonight was a major milestone. We stood here united. We stood here driven by a common purpose that ignites our souls. The knowledge we shared on this call is not to be taken lightly. It pierces through the fog of complacency and demands our absolute attention. Let me remind everyone on here that this is not a fight that is won in a swift, exhilarating sprint. It is a marathon. This is a grueling race, and it will test the limits of our endurance. What we accomplish today will resonate for many generations to come, assuming and with the continued work that we have to do. Now, we may find some of us diverse in thought and perspective. That is a strength that we must cherish. We won't be uniform, and that's okay, but we must stand as one, united in purpose and unwavering in our resolve. Now, tonight we were honored by the president, by the presence of influential voices, speaking words that resonate the depths of our being. Their remarkable remarks mark a pivotal moment in our journey, and this was a colossal first step. Their words were important, and it's important to note that words alone do not suffice. Actions is where true transformation takes place, and we're going to be seeking actions. Rest assured, I have the utmost confidence that those who have spoken will honor their commitment. They have acknowledged the urgency of our cause, and they possess the strength of character to translate their words into meaningful deeds. While we extend an open hand to other Jewish organizations, we will not be deterred by their participation or lack thereof. The battle against anti-Semitism is one we will fight and continue to fight, regardless of how many choose to join us. Our children, our teachers, and the land of Am Yisrael depend on our unwavering determination to take a stand. This fight is one that transcends politics and religion, And as we embark upon this journey, let us remember the immense power of collective action. Our progress may seem slow, and setbacks will inevitably arise, but we must not waver. Through resilience, determination, and an unwavering commitment to justice, we will prevail. The destiny of our communities and the generations to come rests on our shoulders. So with that, I want to thank all of you. Let our actions speak louder than our words as we forge ahead on this sacred journey. Dylan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sorry, I'm muted. Sorry. So I was saying, just thank you to everybody who was joining us, and thank you to the school board members, Melvoin and Schmirlson and Gomez for co-sponsoring with us. Thank you also to UTLA President Cecily Meyer-Cruz and to all the UTLA members here joining us tonight. We couldn't do it without you. Also, thank you to the Superintendent Carvalho. It was great for you to join us this evening. And to parents and teachers, look for emails from us in the future. We have a lot of work ahead, and it's going to be a busy summer. So thank you all, and we will see you next time.